Have you ever stood in the middle of a perfectly quiet street late at night, looked at the rows of identical houses with their identical lawns, and felt a sudden, inexplicable shiver run down your spine? It isn't a fear of danger exactly, or a sense that something is about to jump out at you, but rather a strange, heavy feeling that the silence itself is somehow too loud, or that the perfection around you is hiding something vast and empty. Hello, and welcome to a quiet space where we can explore those subtle, hard-to-name feelings that follow us through the places we call home. Today, we are going to take a long, slow walk through the concept of the Suburban Gothic, exploring why neighborhoods designed for safety and comfort can sometimes feel like the most unsettling places on Earth. It's a feeling that many people experience but rarely talk about, perhaps because it feels a little irrational to be unnerved by a manicured garden or a softly glowing street lamp. But if you have ever felt that specific type of unease, you are certainly not alone. There is a curious paradox at the heart of the suburban experience, something that sits right on the edge of our perception, suggesting that what actually scares us in these spaces isn't the presence of a threat, but the absence of life where we expect to find it. When we think of the word Gothic, we usually picture crumbling castles, fog-covered moors, or ancient, haunted hallways. But the Suburban Gothic is different because it is bathed in light, it is clean, it is new, and it is undeniably orderly. Yet it carries the same weight of isolation, focusing not on ghosts of the past, but on the strange emptiness of the present. Imagine walking down a sidewalk in a newer development just as the sun goes down and the automatic streetlights flicker on with that familiar hum. The light they cast is often that sterile, orange-yellow sodium glow that washes out all the natural colors of the grass and trees, turning the world into a monochrome photograph. And as you walk, you realize that despite the hundreds of windows facing you, there is no movement, no sound of voices, no slamming doors, just the hum of electricity and the distant, rhythmic hiss of a sprinkler system. Can feel, in those moments, like walking through a movie set after the actors have gone home, or like exploring a detailed architectural model that was never meant to be inhabited by actual humans. This is where the feeling begins to take root, the sense that the environment is performing the idea of a neighborhood rather than actually being one. Many people describe this sensation as liminal, a word that refers to a transitional space, a threshold between two states of being. And while a hallway or an airport is a classic example of a liminal space, a quiet suburb at night can feel like a permanent threshold, a waiting room that stretches on for miles. The houses stand there like stage props, presenting a face of welcome and domestic warmth. Yet the blinds are drawn tight, sealing the inside world away from the outside, creating a stark barrier between the public street and the private life. This separation is natural, of course, as we all value our privacy. But when you multiply that withdrawal by hundreds of houses, row after row, mile after mile, the result is a landscape that feels technically populated but experientially abandoned. It creates a dissonance in our minds, a conflict between what we know and what we feel, because we know these homes are full of people, families, televisions, and dinner conversations, but our senses tell us we are completely alone on a desolate planet. This is often where the mind starts to play small tricks, not out of fear, but out of a need to make sense of the stillness. You might find yourself glancing at a second-story window, half expecting to see a silhouette, not because you believe in ghosts, but because your brain is desperately searching for a signal of life to break the monotony. When that signal doesn't come, or when the only sign of life is the flickering blue light of a television reflecting against a ceiling, the isolation deepens. It's interesting to reflect on how this uniformity contributes to the eerie atmosphere, because the architecture of suburbia is often built on repetition. The same roof lines, the same paint colors, the same mailboxes, the same distance from the curb to the front door. And while this symmetry is designed to create a sense of order and harmony, it can also trigger a feeling of unreality. It touches on something psychologists and artists have explored for years, the idea of the uncanny, which usually refers to robots or dolls that look almost human but not quite. Yet spaces can be uncanny too. A neighborhood that is too perfect, too clean, where the grass is always the exact same height and the cars are always parked in the exact same spots, begins to feel like a simulation of reality rather than reality itself. It lacks the messiness, the unpredictability, and the organic chaos that we subconsciously associate with living things. And when we are surrounded by endless manufactured perfection, we can start to feel like intruders in our own world, or like glitches in a system that wasn't designed for the irregularities of human emotion. This is where the feeling changes for many people, shifting from simple loneliness to something slightly more surreal. Have you ever noticed how sound travels differently in these spaces? In a city, silence is rare, a brief pause in a constant symphony of traffic and voices. And in the deep country, silence is filled with the noises of nature, wind, insects, and animals. But in the suburbs, the silence can feel heavy, dampened, and almost artificial. It's a silence that feels enforced, as if a blanket has been thrown over the world. If you drop your keys, the sound seems to echo too loudly. If you cough, you feel like you've broken a rule. This acoustic deadness amplifies the sense of being watched, even when you know logically that no one is looking. It's a phenomenon that speaks to the design of these spaces, often created with wide, curving streets that prioritize cars over pedestrians, meaning that if you are walking, you are doing something that the space wasn't really built for. You become an anomaly in the landscape, a solitary figure moving through a world designed for vehicles and containment. This design philosophy, focusing on privacy and the nuclear family unit, inadvertently strips away the casual, accidental interactions that make a place feel alive. In older towns or cities, you might pass people on the street, nod to a shopkeeper, or hear music drifting from an open window. And those small sensory inputs tell your nervous system that you are part of a tribe, that you are safe among others. In the deep suburbia, those inputs are missing. You are safe, technically, perhaps safer than anywhere else. But your primitive brain, the part of you that scans the horizon for cues, registers the lack of people as a warning sign. It whispers that if something were to happen, if you were to call out, the sound might simply be absorbed by the well-insulated walls and the perfectly trimmed hedges. This is the crux of the suburban Gothic mood. It is the tension between the promise of safety and the feeling of exposure. We are told these are the best places to live, the sanctuaries of success and stability. Yet standing there under the buzz of the street lamp, it can feel like the edge of the world. There is also a temporal aspect to this feeling, a sense that time moves differently here, or perhaps that it has stopped altogether. Because the environment changes so little, because the seasons are managed by landscaping crews and the buildings don't age in the way organic structures do, it can feel like a place stuck in a permanent now. This timelessness can be comforting during the day, offering a retreat from the fast pace of modern life, but at night, it can feel like being trapped in a loop. You might turn a corner and see a street that looks exactly like the one you just left, and for a split second you experience a mild disorientation, a question of where you are and if you've actually moved at all. It's a subtle form of labyrinth, not made of stone walls, but of beige siding and manicured azaleas. This is what many people don't consciously notice until they stop to think about it, the way the layout itself guides your emotions. The curving roads that don't seem to lead anywhere specific, the cul-de-sacs that turn you back around, the lack of landmarks other than the houses themselves. It all contributes to a dreamlike state where the geography feels fluid and unreliable. And then there is the lighting, which deserves a deeper reflection. In the daytime, large windows are celebrated for letting in the sun, connecting the indoors with the outdoors. But at night, those same large windows turn into black mirrors or glowing stages. If you are outside looking in, you see fragments of lives. A kitchen cabinet, a staircase railing, a flicker of movement, framed like scenes in a movie, disconnected from context. If you are inside looking out, the darkness presses against the glass, and because the streetlights are often spaced far apart, there are pools of shadow that the eye naturally tries to fill. We are pattern-seeking creatures. We look for faces in the clouds and figures in the dark. So when we look out at a silent, shadowy lawn, our minds might sketch in a shape that isn't there, simply to resolve the visual ambiguity. It's not that the suburbs are haunted by spirits, but they are haunted by our own projection, by the energy we have to expend to make sense of the emptiness. The suburban Gothic is also fueled by the contrast between the surface and the subsurface. We know that behind every closed door is a complex human reality. Struggles, joys, boredom, secrets, arguments, and dreams. But the exterior reveals absolutely nothing. The lawn is mowed, the trash bins are tucked away, the car is washed. This aggressive maintenance of appearance creates a facade of total control, and there is something inherently unnerving about total control because we know, deep down, that life is messy and uncontrollable. When a place refuses to show any vulnerability, any wear and tear, or any disorder, it triggers a suspicion that the disorder is simply being hidden, pushed down into the basement or swept under the rug. We wonder what is happening in the silence. We wonder if the perfection is a mask. This curiosity is what drives so many stories and films set in these neighborhoods. But you don't need a fictional plot to feel it. You just need to stand still for a moment and let the atmosphere settle around you. It's also worth noting how nature interacts with these spaces, or rather, how it is allowed to interact. In the suburban Gothic, nature is tamed, pruned, and restricted to specific zones. Trees are planted in equidistant rows. Bushes are shaped into geometric spheres or boxes. This domination over nature reinforces the feeling of artificiality. A wild forest is scary because it is chaotic and predatory, but a suburban garden is scary because it is too disciplined. It suggests a world where nothing is allowed to grow freely, where every leaf is accounted for. And yet, nature has a way of creeping back in. The weeds cracking through the driveway, the coyotes that wander the streets at 3 a.m., the sudden, violent thunderstorm that knocks out the power and plunges the neighborhood into total, ancient darkness. In those moments of disruption, the illusion breaks, and the suburbs suddenly feel fragile, like a temporary encampment on wild land that could be reclaimed at any moment. That fragility is part of the unease. We build these fortresses of comfort, but they are thin shells against the vastness of the night. As we continue to explore this feeling, it is important to remember that this reaction isn't a criticism of the people who live there. After all, millions of us do, and we find great happiness and security in these homes. But rather, it is an acknowledgement of the strange psychological trade-off we make for that security. We trade the noise and friction of the crowd for space and silence, and in doing so, we sometimes find ourselves confronting the loudness of our own thoughts. The suburban Gothic is, in many ways, a mirror. When the world outside is stripped of detail and distraction, we are left with ourselves, and sometimes that is the most unsettling thing of all. It brings up questions about what we truly need to feel grounded. Do we need the hum of a city, the proximity of neighbors we can see and hear? Or do we just need to make peace with the quiet? Some people notice that the feeling of unease lifts instantly the moment they see another person walking a dog or simply taking out the trash. That single spark of life breaks the spell. It transforms the set back into a neighborhood. It reminds us that the silence isn't empty, just resting. But until that moment of connection happens, the feeling remains. a low-level hum of anxiety that vibrates just below the surface of the manicured reality. It is a mood that is captured perfectly in the late hours of the night, when the only light comes from the vending machine at a closed school, or the glow of a gas station sign miles away reflecting off the low clouds. It is a specific modern form of melancholy, lonely, beautiful, and slightly terrifying all at once. So, if you ever find yourself walking through a neighborhood like this, and you feel that familiar prickle on your neck, or you find yourself walking a little faster to get back to the safety of your own front door, try to pause for just a second. Take a breath. Look at the way the light falls on the pavement. Listen to the absolute stillness. Remind yourself that the fear you feel is simply your mind trying to find a pattern in the blankness, a story in the silence. It is a testament to your humanity that you crave connection so deeply that the absence of it feels like a threat. The Suburban Gothic isn't about monsters or mysteries. It is about the quiet tragedy of being close to so many people, yet feeling completely alone. It is the realization that a perfect house does not always make a home, and that a perfect neighborhood can sometimes feel like the loneliest place on earth. As we wrap up this reflection, allow yourself to view these spaces with a softer gaze. They are not trying to scare you. They are just waiting, silently, for life to wake up again. The unease is just a reminder of how much being alive means to you. Thank you for walking with me through these quiet streets today. If this reflection resonated with you, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for being here.